Good morning. Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee and Chat with Hallee Bridgeman. I'm so happy you could join me today. I have my cup of coffee, so I hope you have your cup of coffee or tea or whatever you drink and you have a few minutes while we chat. So it's Thanksgiving week. Happy Thanksgiving on Thursday to you. I'm so excited I get to cook 2 complete Thanksgiving meals this week. I'm doing one on Wednesday for my daughter and her boyfriend and one on Thursday. And so I have 2 of everything, and it's like the type of thing that completely feeds my soul. The cooking and preparing good, healthy, tasting good, beautiful food for family and friends and having them enjoy it is like my favorite thing on the planet. And so this is my happy time. And then, shopping Friday. You can't beat that. So I hope that you guys have a great Thanksgiving. So my question today, I'm answering, there were, someone emailed me 3 questions, and I don't think I can do all 3 at once, so I'm going to do one at a time. So the first question was, how did I know when my writing was up to par to publish? So for those of you who don't know my writing testimony, I am self-published. I'm independently published. My husband and I own a publishing company, Olivia Kimball Press. We publish other authors. We pay authors. We pay agents. We pay royalties. But it started with my book, Sapphire Eyes. And so to tie into that question, here's an interesting statistic. I teach a class called Be the 10%. And it's also part of my day-long class of the 7 steps to successful self-publishing, and step number 1 is be the 10%. So what that means is that in my research, what I have discovered is that agents and editors of publishing houses, literary agents and then editors of publishing houses, say that 80 to 90% of the books that they receive are not even written well enough to be edited for publication. So think about that. If you're going to submit a book to an agent or to an editor at a publishing company, you're going to submit like your best work. You've had family read it, you've had friends read it, you've had critique groups and critique partners go over it, you've had all of this work done to it, and you're saying, this is something I anticipate publishing, you want this, you're going to love every word, and you're going to come to me with a publishing contract for 10 more books. And that's basically what anyone who submits to an agent or an editor is anticipating the response to be. However, the reality is that 80 to 90% of the people that do it, of the books that are submitted, are not even written well enough to be edited. Now that's some hardcore, not great writing. It's hardcore bad writing. And so if you take that number and then have it be, so now you have the whole self-publishing market. This is the publishing world went into like this massive overhaul in the last 6 or 7 years, and indie publishing has become like this huge thing, and this huge percentage of books, millions of them that are online and available in ebook form and often paperback, are independently published, which means that the author said, I'm not going to seek publication, I'm going to do it myself. So it's fair to say that probably 80 to 90% of those books should not have been published, if that's fair. Because if you're going to write the best book that you can write and submit it to an editor at a publishing house, and you're saying this is the best I can do and this is wonderful and you want to publish it, then it's going to be the same for the self-published. This is the best that I can write, and as soon as I publish it, everyone is going to want to buy it, and it's going to hit the bestseller list. So as an indie author, our job, our commitment to readers, our responsibility is to be in the 10%. To be that 10% that is written well enough for publication. And that takes, number one, education. Number 2, information. And number 3, professional editing. So the very first book that I wrote, the very first book that I published was Sapphire Ice. By the time I wrote Sapphire Ice, that was my 7th book that I ever wrote. I had written several secular romances and romantic suspense, and then toward the end of that time period of my life, it was about a 2-year time period, I wrote 11 books. And Sapphire Ice, Emerald Fire, and Topaz Heat were the last 3 that I wrote in that time period. So before I started writing, I was a voracious reader. And I just wrote, and I wrote without any kind of education. I wrote only with like talent. There was nothing, nothing was honed. Everything was very rough edged. And so then I put them away, and I put them away for years. And when I pulled them back out to get ready for publication, now I'm talking, I am 10 years older. And I start reading these books, and they are so poorly written. However, they were editable. I was able to edit them, but I was able to edit them by gutting them and starting over. And then, so, I did a self-edit, I did beta reads, I did all of this stuff. And then my husband, Greg, who is the editor-in-chief of Olivia Kimball Press, he had some God-given talent for editing, and he then edited, and then we published Sapphire Ice, Emerald Fire, Topaz Heat. A year later, Greater Than Rubies. And, over the course of the last 6 years, we've published 26 books. However, 2 years ago, we started on the journey of audiobook writing and, or audiobook publishing. And so, we had our audio guy is Gene Rowley, and he is the voice artist for my books. And so the first book he did was On the Ropes. And so On the Ropes was like my 23rd book or something like that. So, he did and On the Ropes was written by me, self-edited by me, then went to two professional editors to be edited, and came back to me. So by now I have a system, and I have, paid contractors that do the editing for me. And so, On the Ropes was a great audiobook, and I enjoyed the process, and it was a novella, so it didn't take very long. So then the next thing he did was Sapphire Ice. Well, so what you do is the author listens to the audiobook reading along with your book, and you're hearing the way that they do inflection and the voices and everything. So I'm listening to Sapphire Ice, and within like 2 or 3 chapters, I was practically in tears, because this book has sold over 100,000 copies. And this book was not to my standard of writing and that is today, or to Greg's standard of editing that is today. And basically what it is over the course of the last 6 years, we have grown and matured and educated ourselves in writing well and editing well, and this entire process. And so I called Gene, and I said, if I rewrite this book, can you please re-record it? Which is not a small thing. This is a big deal, and most voice artists would say no. But Gene very graciously understood exactly what I was talking about and said, absolutely, go ahead. And so I didn't rewrite the book, but I did edit it. And so I re-edited the book, and it went back to Greg to be re-edited, and then we did the same thing with the other books in that series, where we started back over and edited them the way that they should have been in the first place. And so basically the answer is, I thought that I was ready. I thought that I was really good. And it's so years and years ago, I can't think of the name of the production company now, but they did Fireproof and Facing the Giants and Flywheel and a couple of other movies that were really great Christian films. Well, so Facing the Giants became really popular. This is what launched their movie production company more than anything, because the ratings people had given their movie a PG rating because they prayed in Jesus' name. And so it hit the news that this Christian film that should have gotten a G rating got a PG rating. And so all of these Christians kind of hit the theater in mass to support this film, and it became like this best number one or whatever, really high up in the sales for when it was launched, only because of this whole ratings issue. And so we went to see it with Kaylee, Greg, and myself, and she was younger. She was maybe 10 or 11, my daughter. So this is a long time ago, before the boys were born. And it was a really great movie, right? It was a great story. Within minutes, you were pulled into it. And basically what it is the production wasn't great. It was on a budget. And the sound wasn't great. It was on a budget. And the script was really, really good. And the acting wasn't great because they were on a budget. And so, but it was such a good story that by the time you got into the story, you ceased to care that the lighting might not have been the best, or that the sound might not have been the best, or that the acting was really good but not, Hollywood level of acting. And you get so sucked into the story that all of that goes away, and you're just caught in the script and the characterization and, how well that was written. And even, my daughter, my 3rd or 4th grade daughter, is sitting there just crying, and she's like, I don't know why I'm crying at the end of it, because I'm so happy. And it was, that's how good of that movie it was, is it pulled my daughter in and gave her like this joyous release of emotion out of just pure joy. But if you sit down and analyze all of the things that make a movie, it really wasn't that great of a movie. It just was a great, great story filled with amazing characters. Well, that's kind of like Sapphire Ice. Sapphire Ice is a great story with great characters that you cannot let go of, characters that I still get people writing me saying, oh, I can't, I still think of them, and I every once in a while wonder how Robin and Tony are doing, and then I remember that they're fictional characters. And a book that really, when I listened to my audio book of it, I was in tears over the lack of quality. When I, am going around the country teaching, put your best book forward and, do all of these things properly. And my first one just wasn't that great. And so, but the story and the characterization, by the time you realize, like if you sat down and analyzed the book, you would have realized it wasn't like that the writing was moderately immature, and that the editing was moderately immature. And so, we've learned so much now that it's no longer an issue. And so that book was in the 10%. That book was written well enough to be edited, but it just wasn't edited well. And so now, my system is write a book, and then I go through this intense self-editing process. And then it goes to the first editor, who does an intense editing process. And then it goes to a second editor, and then it goes through this intense editing process. And then it comes back to me. And once again, I go through an intense editing process. And so, we have it down now. And my writing has improved just from the sake of writing. But how did I know that my writing was up to par? I just assumed that it was because I had had so much great feedback from it. And then over time learned it probably wasn't truly up to par. And so now, I can look at things so much more analytical as I prepare books, just because of the training through 26 books. So that was a great question. And I have 2 more questions in that series that I'll cover over the next couple of weeks. But for now, it's Thanksgiving week. Y'all have a great Thanksgiving if you're in the States. And I will see you next Monday on Cyber Monday. So make sure that you're signed up for my newsletter so that you get the notice of all of the great things that will be going on my end for Cyber Monday. So God bless you.